What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the Scalar Learning channel. Today, we are here to talk about something that's very important and that's becoming a huge part of the Scalar Learning mission, and that is college admission. So if you come to the channel, you know the channel, you probably come here because you're looking for standardized test prep on either the ACT or the SAT. And of course, those tests are instrumental to getting into college. But now we are adding something to our services that is so important, and it's college counseling, because of course we're trying to get you prepared for these tests to help you get into college, but what about ultimately writing your story and then taking you through that entire process from start to finish to get you into the school that's the right fit for you? And I'm not the expert on this front. Olivia is the expert on this front. So that is who we've got here today, and we're going to talk about her entire history working with students. She has a great depth of knowledge and experience when it comes to college counseling. She's worked with so many students, had so many amazing outcomes. So we're going to talk to her today about that entire process, even answer some common questions that have come up from parents and students alike, and just take it as it goes. So Olivia, welcome.
Thank you.
And before we jump in, so just give people a little bit of background in terms of what you've done, both in tutoring as a tutor for Scalar Learning as well as independently, and then also some of the things that you have done in college counseling.
Sure, yeah. So I started with, it's English prep is really my forte. I love doing SATs and ACTs, schoolwork, papers. I really started in a book club style tutoring where I took 2 or 3 kids and we would read some of the classics, some contemporary books, and just talk about them together and make sure that kids understood what the books were really about, why they were so important when they were written and today, and just try to make reading enjoyable. I still do that today, and a lot of it's over Zoom, which is like a fun experience because it's so much more integrated with technology. And from that, because my students aged into it, I started doing college counseling. And it's probably my favorite part of the tutoring aspect. It's really about getting to know the students for who they are. You know, it's kind of where you take the academics out of it, and it's like, hey, who are you as a person? And I get to learn their stories, everything about them, everything they think, everything they hope and dream. And even the most minute things that you don't think are important probably are when it comes to the college application process. So it's really a great way to get to know each other, to feel comfortable, just like telling a stranger who you are, and sifting through the story of your life and finding the gold nuggets that we want to share for admissions officers.
And I think what's so cool about your process and why we've just been such a good team over the years is, even though your domain is English, right? When we do standardized test prep, we're like a tag team. You do English, I do math. We kind of stay in our own lanes, and it works really well. But the cool thing is, I think we're both all about the authenticity. Even whether it comes to college applications or test prep, of like actually learning the fundamentals. In your case, you're not about trying to game the system. You're about trying to really tell the story of the student and do it in a beautifully authentic way. And I think that some people might be like, well, wait a minute. Will my chances be better if I do try and game the system? And I know you've talked to me about that as well. And so leading into that, you've had phenomenal results with a really authentic approach, which is what everybody should do anyways, because you want the college to know who you are. So can you tell us a little bit over the last few years, some of the schools that students that have worked with you that, you know, where they've gained admissions?
Yeah, for sure. So some of my previous students have gone on to get into UPenn, Cornell, Williams, Swarthmore, Notre Dame. This year I had a Stanford and a University of Chicago. It's everything from the big schools to the small liberal arts schools, the UCs, UCLA, Berkeley. And it's not, it's not about the level of the school, right? That's also something that's really important. It's about the right school for you. And we're sitting down together and we're making your college list. And I'm asking you to go look at schools or research schools just so I can start figuring out the right schools for you. And, I've got students that are like, hey, I really want to go to a big school. And the more we talk about it and the more we hear what's actually important to them, suddenly it's like, actually, wait, I want to be able to recognize everybody on campus. And we're pivoting, sometimes very late in the game.
Yeah.
I had a student this year who got into Carnegie Mellon and applied early admissions, but wasn't going to until just a few days before the deadline, until he realized, wait, that's where I want to go. So It's a process from start to finish. It's a very hands-on process. I'm available to students at all times because it is. Students are texting me at school being like, wait a minute, I think I want to apply here, or hold on, can we work on this tonight? And so, yeah, it's really great getting their feedback and mine. We're just bouncing off each other the whole time.
So you mentioned it's a involved process. Can you tell us a little bit about your process from start to finish?
Yes. So I think the best time to start this process is usually your junior summer. That's usually when I'll start with students. The first few sessions are really just talking. I'm asking you a lot of questions and I'm taking a ton of notes and you're just talking. And I'm gonna ask you silly things like, what'd you like to do when you were 5? What's something that scares you? What do you feel like is a weight on your shoulders? Whatever it is. And we just talk, and suddenly patterns start to emerge. You might not see the patterns as the student. I see them though. And I'm like, wow, when you talk about sports and when you talk about comic books and when you talk about your parents, this is the through line I see. And that's what we're going to use, because that's obviously what's authentic to you and the way you think and the way you see the world. And suddenly you're connecting all of these pieces of a student's life through one through line. So it starts with talking, then we start writing. And we write lots of drafts. And it's really about that common essay for the Common App, which, the UCs are a different process. They have their own applications. A lot more schools are getting their own applications. But that one essay really bleeds into all of them. So we work on that one common essay. And then once that's locked and loaded, we start all of the supplementals.
Now, through that process, I imagine you get to know the students really well. And part of what you do, I think some of the magic behind what you do is that you also have a very good understanding of not just the schools and the academics, but also the types of students that would fit in particular campuses. So how do you help students, once you're writing the essays, you're really getting to know them, how do you help them then make decisions about, hey, I think you might fit in here, or et cetera?
It's a few different ways. Sometimes I always fight for my one non-negotiable. I'm like, hey, if we're working together, I get one non-negotiable. Like, you got to apply because I feel so strongly. Most of the time, we are aligned on that by the time we get to application process and really like submitting. But it's about, hey, check out this video or see this article, or can you take a tour? I really think you'd benefit from a tour. Even if it's not that school, it's a comparable school. I see that a lot with, do you want a campus or do you not want a campus? If I can direct a student to like, hey, go visit NYU if you can, they're going to know really quickly if they want a campus or not. Or, hey, can you check out UCLA? Same thing, you're going to know. You can also, the way students talk about how important weather is to them, or sunlight or sunshine, how much they want to go out of state from their families and just figure out who they are. All of that comes into it.
I'm gonna fire off some questions, if that's okay, of like commonly asked questions. I know we talked recently that parents had particular questions about, hey, like starting out in 9th grade, what classes should I take? So let's talk just generally when we talk about honors versus non-honors, or how many AP classes. How do you guide students earlier than junior year, let's say, in terms of, how important is being in honors versus not being in honors? And I'm sure there's because I always have a thought on this as well when it comes to choosing math classes. So I imagine it's like, well, as long as you can get a certain level of output in the honors classes, then it's probably worth it. So what do you usually tell parents?
Traditionally, the junior year is going to be the most competitive schedule. And it also is traditionally when students are taking the SAT. So with that in mind, the earlier, if you can take your most competitive schedule of classes, I suggest you do it. It's really helpful because by the time you get to APs, that's actually where I think you can be a little more lenient. If you know for a fact you don't want to study science in your future, a school isn't going to be like, well, wait a minute, why didn't the student take AP Chem and instead they took honors lit? A little more lenient as you get into the AP or IB courses. But the earlier, it is better to take your most competitive schedule, so long as you feel you're going to succeed and learn. You have to be where you're comfortable as well, because we want the passion to reflect in the grades.
What about when it comes to the extracurriculars or sports? What are your recommendations there? Are you just like, hey, you should do as much as you can? Or do you say, no, it's a good idea to really focus if you're going to be a phenom in tennis or whatever it might be? What are your thoughts?
Definitely. When I get those students who are in every single club and did everything, I'm like, okay, but which of these were the most important? Because ultimately the applications only let you list 10. And really, we're just looking at 3 to 5. That's really what it's about. So I totally agree with you. We don't want to take everything we possibly can. We just want to take the things that actually excite us. Sometimes those aren't in school, and that's okay. Find something outside of school, whether it's your own personal research that you like to do, whether it's practicing sport or musical instruments or anything like that. It does not have to be school related. It does not have to be a school club. It's actually quite impressive if you took the initiative to go find something you couldn't get in school, but that interested you.
So let's transition back now. It's kind of interesting because I know that sometimes when you work with students, they'll have other folks that they might simultaneously be working with, whether it's somebody at the school or this and that. And sometimes I'm sure their advice is great, but I know we come up to points where sometimes students are getting advice to quote unquote game the system. Hey, you should write about this because colleges really like that.
Yeah.
What's your advice to parents or students when they're getting this type of advice and they're getting it probably pretty emphatically, I imagine, but it just doesn't feel right? You know, something like, but this isn't me, but they're getting pushed to do that. What's your advice?
I have come up against that. And it's always one of two outcomes. I always push and assure the students that being authentically themselves is the right way. It always is. It's proven, at least in my personal track record. So I just reassure them, and very oftentimes students and parents come to that acceptance themselves because that's ultimately what feels true. So I just reassure them. I'm like, I really think you need to go this angle. You need to be true. You don't want to study physics. Why are we writing about your love of physics? It reads like a generic lie because that's unfortunately what it is. And if I can read it, somebody else can too. So ultimately, they often come to just choosing authenticity. If we're really at a head with that kind of issue, all I can do is tell the student, this is where I'm at. This is what this other person is telling you. Now you choose. This is your future. This is not mine, and this is not that other person's. And ultimately, I think that responsibility put on the student is very important. And I think the students respect that as well. And then, it's out of our hands, and we've guided them as best as we could.
All right, we're going to end on a bit of a broad question, if that's okay, and just why? Why is it so important for this whole process to not only, like you said, not just get into the most prestigious or the highest ranked in this program or whatever? Why is it so important ultimately for individuals to match appropriately and be placed? What are the ramifications? What are the positive, all these beautiful positives that they can expect when it happens correctly?
I mean, people say that college is the best 4 years of your life, and a lot of people there's a reason for that. People say it's the best 4 years of your life, and that's the reason. I think when you find the college that is right for you, God, it just feels so good. It's home, and it feels like home, and that's a very authentic feeling. I have had students that I worked with that ultimately went with what they thought would be better, and I've actually helped them on transfer applications because of it. They went for half a year and realized this was better, but not for me. And they felt miserable and they weren't happy. And that's reflective as well. It's not about the best school. It's about the right school for you. And I think students get so locked into these rankings and what's its prestige and what's its reputation. But there are so many schools that people don't realize are also very prestigious or very important or are better for what you want to study. I'm not going to guide a student who wants to study theater to Harvard, probably. It's not really the right place for you. But I might guide you to Ithaca, or I might guide you to Carnegie Mellon. It's just things like that.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much. And, just to reiterate, I will say that from my personal experience, of course, going to college was so instrumental, and being happy there is so important because it lets you really flourish, find your right niche of friends now as you come into being your own person. So we wish you all the best of luck in this process. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at tutoring@scalarlearning.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to work with Olivia or get any questions answered, whatever, hit us up. We're always here. And last but not least, if you have a quick question, you can leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.